Every city has a story. And in Providence, that story runs through concrete and steel. Interstate 95, more than just a highway. It's a line that slices through history, through neighborhoods, through lives. Built in the name of progress during the mid-20th century, I-95 was part of a grand vision to connect the country from Florida to Maine. But in Providence, the cost of connection came with a price. Entire communities uprooted, historic streets erased, and a city forever changed. This is the story of how a road shaped the city, the promises it made, the neighborhoods it divided, and the voices that still echo beneath the hum of traffic. This is I-95 in Providence.
But sometime in the 50s, the state of Rhode Island started, the state and the city started co-planning a north-south freeway that they built it in segments. They didn't build it all at once. But the segments later were incorporated into routes 95 and 195, which were led by the federal government. They were federal projects, basically. So the whole life of the project, from the very beginning of, building the North-South Freeway to completing 95 and 195. I think the whole thing wrapped up in the mid to late 1960s. It cut through 95 through the north end and downtown and south side, and then 195 cut across Fox Point and went into East Providence. I haven't done all three together. The city was clearing so-called blighted neighborhoods, which was a term that was used at the time. To refer to neighborhoods where the housing stock was old, or where the city was targeting specific communities and residents without saying that's what they were doing. There was a little bit of that going on too. People's houses, essentially, sites that maybe are not famous but important to communities would have been affected by the highway construction. One sort of landmark you could say is 95. When they were cutting it through the north end of the city, they built it over the Meshastic River. So where the North Burial Ground is, right to the left of the North Burial Ground, you wouldn't even know it's there, but where the highway is, underneath the highway is the river. The river's been completely buried and hidden by the highway on the north end. So that's one landmark. Yeah. We did talk a little bit about it, and I know you're focused on 95, but 195 was planned and built at the same time, and 195 had a huge negative impact on the Cape Verdean neighborhood of Fox Point. The highway was built in a way that cut the neighborhood off from the river and required demolition of a lot of people's houses. So if you know where Coffee Exchange is, the coffee shop on Wickenden Street, behind there you'll see a bunch of parking lots, and it's just sort of a weird stub of an area that used to be a neighborhood, and that neighborhood was cleared 195. And just it's not a matter of entire, except in that case maybe it's not that entire neighborhoods were cleared, it's that that the highways cut very destructive paths through the center of neighborhoods, and then kind of all the other housing and all the land around those paths of the road would depreciate in value and become hard to access, and and their air quality would degrade, and all these different factors would sort of contributed to bringing those neighborhoods down in ways. There was some resistance to 195 among Fox Point residents. I'm not aware of any organized resistance to 95 in the other neighborhoods. Yeah, I mean, now looking back, we can say this was probably not a great idea, but at the time, I don't know if I don't know if people knew like what the long-term effects of those roads would be, and so I don't think there was a lot of opposition.
Yeah.
However, if you know the Route 10 expressway, which is on the west end of the city, when Route 10 was being built, they were also creating an industrial park where a neighborhood called Mashapag used to be, and the residents of Mashapag did protest the displacement that happened because of the highway, but also because of the industrial park. So. Couple of years, that project came together very quickly, and there were some public hearings, but they were not very successful in stopping the road or the industrial park. It was mostly federally funded. Probably want to fact check this, but I think it was 90% federal, 10% state. I don't think there were any major controversies at the time. It's more, that looking back, we can say this was a destructive project in some ways, and we should probably mitigate those destructive impacts. But the thing, one thing to remember is that 95 and the other highways were being built at the same time that the city was pursuing urban renewal projects. They were very closely related things, but not the same thing. So there was highway construction, and then there was urban renewal. And urban renewal is sort of a euphemism for what this, in a lot of cases, the city was tearing down neighborhoods, and they were planning these things together. The routes of the highway partly determine like where the city, what neighborhood the city targeted for urban renewal. Like, if you look at the urban renewal projects throughout Providence, they're often like closely connected to the highway, and the sites and the urban renewal sites are closely connected. So, and what the city was trying to do was reshape itself to be, because more and more people were driving, and the city wanted to make itself attractive to this new like automobile culture. But also, again, they were targeting lower income neighborhoods of color. So it was a very complicated kind of series of things that they were doing, but they were all connected. I would say some businesses would have seen it as a disruption. Some of them would have seen it as a benefit. So, for example, the little corner store, or shoe repair shop or whatever, those sorts of little businesses that would have been displaced by the highway. That was not beneficial to them. But bigger, manufacturers and industrial businesses that wanted easier access for like trucks coming off the highway would have seen it as beneficial, because the economy was shifting from being a railroad-based economy to being a highway-based economy. So yeah, so those bigger manufacturing businesses and like malls and, you know, businesses that sort of oriented to cars and trucks, they would have seen it as a benefit. Greater distances to get sort of the basics to meet their basic daily needs. And for some people that was great. Like, you want some clothes, just go to the mall. You want groceries, just go to the supermarket. If you have a car, if you can drive, then that would have maybe you would have liked those changes. But for very young people, for elderly people, for people, that shift to an automobile culture would have been harder because a lot of people were used to taking the bus, taking the trolley, having things close to home, you know, again, like a corner store. And as all those businesses started to struggle and started to close or be displaced by urban renewal and by the highways, I think life got a little harder for not everybody, but certain people. And, you know, neighborhood life would have suffered. And you can see that, you know, Providence lost more of its population in those years than any other U.S. city except for Detroit. The 195 relocation downtown, you know, I was saying like, oh, well, the pedestrian bridges, that's where the highway used to run. And as you might know, the highway is now all the way out on the edge of the land, basically on the river. And so that opened up real estate and public space downtown, and that's been beneficial for people who use that public space and profit from that real estate. But out in the neighborhoods, I would say, you know, not much has been done. We're still basically living with the negative effects of all these roads. And now it seems like there's some little bit of effort to make improvements to neighborhoods that were impacted by the highway. Like in South Providence now, there is the city is leading like a planning effort to reduce like paved land around Rhode Island Hospital. If you look at an aerial map of Rhode Island Hospital, like there's a huge circle of parking lots all around the hospital. You know, that creates a heat island effect where the neighborhoods are warmer and the air quality is poor and all those things again. So, and that's connected, that's related to the highway. You know, we need all those parking spots because everyone drives and everyone's coming in on the bike road. And there's some effort to like, okay, what can we do to bring more greenery to these areas and make them more pleasant for people who live here. But it's only, you know, that's only starting now, right? Like, what are we, 60 years out from the completion of these roads? So yeah, I think there's a lot to be done.
Like she was like,
I think the focus was almost entirely on downtown. You know,
Well, yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah, we're gonna have to have
the
it.
relocation of 195 started in the early 2000s, and around that time there were other like planning meetings around like, well, how can we reconnect downtown to the south side, and how can we bring more green space and more development to downtown to mitigate the effects of the road. But yeah, again, that hasn't really happened in the neighborhoods yet.
As you can see, the bridge may have had many beneficial effects, but the damage done to those neighborhoods of color was detrimental to their culture and left many residents displaced even to this day. We wish that you, as viewers, do your part to acknowledge the damage done to these neighborhoods and stand up to it.